Sorry, I'm just getting around and unmuting people. Let's get this underway then. So, on behalf of Greg and myself, welcome everyone. Welcome to our second webinar of 3, which we're really hosting to familiarise yourselves with like the Coast To Kosci 2023. And this time, it's all about our runners. But firstly, if we could begin by acknowledging this brilliant country in which we all reside, and we especially want to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands in which we are located this evening, and giving a special mention to those, to the lands in which we run our Coast To Kosci race, those of the Yuin people and those of the Ngarigo people. And then we pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging, and to celebrate the diversity of the Aboriginal people and their ongoing cultures and connections to the lands, the mountains and the waters of Australia. So a couple of house rules. If you could jump to mute, that would be much appreciated. And then if you've got any comments, any questions, any compliments, any abuse, just save them up, put them into the chat, and then we'll tackle them after the webinar's finished. So, webinar 2, runner considerations. Pardon the pun, but we'll run the same road as prior years. So what we're going to do is interview a couple of past runners to grab their perspectives, their opinions, their insights into, firstly, what gets you to the start line of Coast To Kosci, and then secondly, what successfully gets you to the finish line of Coast To Kosci. So in the past, we've heard from people like Ewan Horsburgh, the Pocket Rocket Jane Trumper, Shane Simpson, Nikki Wind. We've heard from Kevin Brick Heaton. We've heard from the man himself, Greg Wallace.
When you've been mucking around.
And we're very privileged to introduce 2 runners for this year. So I know she's not very used to doing this sort of thing, but she's going to do a brilliant job tonight because we're going to not impose upon her too much. But Nikki Burke. Nikki's a working mother of 3. She's the wife to the crewman Cams. They live in Maitland in New South Wales. They're originally from the Northern Beaches. Nikki runs for fun, but she's managed to snag some podium spots, like first female in the Great North Walk 100 miler. That was in 2018. Second female and second overall at the Elephant Trail 100 kilometres in 2022. And she was first female, third overall at the Elephant Trail 100 mile in 2023. Nikki's a 3-time starter of Coast To Kosci in 2017, 2020 and 21. And she's a 3-time finisher. One of those was Summit. 2 of those were inclement weather finishes. Self-admitted, she's a hater of roads. She's a lover of dogs. She does almost all of her training with her dog Mouse through the state forests and the GNW. And when she's not running, she can be found throwing around a barbell or a dumbbell at the CrossFit Maitland. So welcome, Nikki, and thanks for agreeing to do tonight. We'll go easy on you. Gregory.
Okay, and joining Nikki this evening is Joe Ward. Joe has a pretty strong running resume as well as an Aussie 24-hour rep, head coach for Manly Beach Running Club. He's won GNW similar to Nikki in 2018, 24-hour Aussie Invitational in 2020, South Sydney Ultra 24-hour in 2021, Coburg 24-hour in 2023, and he's got a few Coast To Koscis under his belt, and he's also crewed quite a number of times as well. So he's very experienced at seeing it from both lenses as a runner and as a crew member. And he also won 2021 Coast To Kosci in 25:14 and currently holds the inclement weather record. And I think Joe showed that you can love the rain and you can love it for, I think, pretty much all of 240 Ks, because frick, it was wet this year. So really good to have you along tonight, Joe. All right. So before we sort of dive into some of the questions, just a real brief For Nikki first, then to Joe. How'd you get into running?
Hi guys, thanks for having me. I hope you can hear me okay. I got into running only about 10 years ago. It was really after my second child was born. I wasn't coping with the mother's guilt of it all, having to split my attention and my heart between the two of them. So, and I found that getting up early and going out for a walk or a run helped. And I would see these people running and they would make it look so effortless. And I couldn't figure out how they were doing that. My knees would blow up after 5 kilometers or 10 kilometers. I got up to 10 and I would spend like 4 hours with ice packs on my knees and blisters on my feet. So it just completely baffled me. But I was hooked. I wanted to figure out how I could keep running further and having more of that quiet time to process my thoughts and my emotions before the kids woke up, so I could get back and tackle the day and have a clear mind to handle it all. And that's what I did.
Thanks, Nikki, for the insight. Joe, what about you?
Yeah, so I ran a lot as a kid, and after a few years at university, I got seriously out of shape with lots of drinking and partying, and started smoking 30 a day as well. Used to be quite an enthusiastic smoker back in those days. I quit smoking in 03, 04, and I used running as a way to get fit again, get back in shape, and to quit smoking. And I found that the more I ran, the less I wanted to smoke. And yeah, I learned to replace a bad habit with a good one. But when I first started running, it was less than 2Ks. Then back home, cigarette in my mouth and doing sit-ups with my feet up on the bed. So yeah, it was unexpected to find that I enjoyed running, and I enjoyed running long. So yeah, a bit of a change.
That is a real change around.
Thanks, guys, for being so candid and honest. Really appreciate that. Joe, I'll start with you. Can you recount a memorable experience or race that's had a significant impact on your ultramarathon journey?
Yes, I've been running ultras for a while, over sort of 10, 12 years, probably 14 years. So I have a lot of ultra stories from over the years. Some I can share and some remain out on the roads and the trails and probably won't be shared. But my favorite ultra stories are all from the C2K. So my favorite C2K story is from pacing and crewing Kieran Blackmore, aka KB, back in 2012. And KB was running the event for the second time. He DNF'd the first time round. And it was around 200 Ks into the race near Snowy River. And KB was mentally 100% committed, but his body and his mind were starting to fail him. His core muscles in particular had given up, so he's leaning to one side, and his brain was offering up all sorts of crazy hallucinations. So for much of this section, I walked with one arm under his armpit, like I was walking him up the aisle, and trying to hold him up straight and stop him falling off the edge of the road. And after many hours and even more kilometers, we were through Charlotte's Pass and finally climbing Kosci, the last 18 Ks of a very hard race for KB and for the crew. And we were moving, but KB was hallucinating really hard. We knew that Whippet was the event medic, was up ahead. So we tried to gently kind of coax KB back from the upside down world that he was in and bring him back to reality. And we knew that Whippet was going to ask 3 questions to test KB and make sure he was still okay to run the race and get to the summit. And if he failed these 3 questions, he was going to be pulled from the course and receive a DNF after 229 Ks of running. So Whippet would meet us only a K from the summit. So at the highest toilets in Australia, which you're all going to get to and explore. And we knew the 3 questions he was going to ask: what's your name? Where are you and what race are you in? So we began coaching KB. Your name is Kieran Blackmore. You're on Mount Kosci and you're running the Coast to Kosci. And Kieran Blackmore, Mount Kosci, C2K. It was at this point KB pointed above his head to the sky and said with absolute awe and delight, "Wow, look at those huge galleon ships. Who put those there?" And as I looked up, I was pretty exhausted as well. I'd been pacing KB for 2 days, and I could see these huge galleon ships as well, and they were truly magnificent. They were these huge ships above our head that looked as real as anything that was out there on the course. I ignored them and kept marching forward and supporting KB under his arm, walking him up to the top of Mount Kosci. KB answered the 3 questions like a pro. We made it past Whippet to the top of Kosci and then back down the mountain to Charlotte's Pass for KB's first finish in around 43 hours. We were elated and exhausted, and we never did find out where those pirate galleon ships came from. But just loving the hallucinations out on the course. So many stories of stormtroopers and ladies doing karate and UFOs. Hallucinations are one of the best aspects, I think, of C2K.
I reckon all that's a kind of like a directly correlated to like your imagination and the power of it. So obviously he's got a very powerful one. That's brilliant story. Thanks, Joe.
He must have been reading some books or watching some movies about galleon ships, but I saw them too. They were definitely there.
Nikki, anything is interesting?
No, probably not as interesting as that awesome story. Hallucinations are the best. There's been some good ones over the years. But for me, some memorable experiences that I've had, mainly, you'll never forget like your first ultra, and mine was the Narrabeen All-Nighter, and seeing an actual ultra runner running after 10 hours of running back and forth along a footpath was just so awe-inspiring for me. And at that time, it was 2014, and I had Brendan Davies, and I remember seeing him still running, and I was just like, oh my God, how do people do this? And that was the year that I got, I had Pam Muston, who, as she passed me, said, "Oh, Nikki, you're walking again." And I remember just thinking, oh my God, yeah, you're right. I shouldn't be walking. I should be running. Everyone else is still running. But I hadn't quite learned how to do that yet. So that the Narrabeen All-Nighter has been a fond one for me. And it was also, I got the Best Novice trophy, which was the first trophy I've ever won. So that was huge for me, and something that I still treasure, and sitting in my front room in my gym so I can see it whenever I'm running on the treadmill. So it's a nice fond memory for me, and it's kept me loving the sport for this long. So it's good. That's me.
Brilliant, Nikki. Thank you. Sounds as if Pam was trying to pay you a backhanded compliment or give you a little bit of motivation.
She's awesome with the tough love. I still love it every year. Can't wait to see her again this year.
Yeah, she's notorious for that.
Yep, he's online now. Joe, I think I was up there. I was at the summit, and I think Nikki was crewing for me. We were at the summit when you were there with Kieran. I remember you passing it. I think we were at the can, and we hot-footed it, and we were seeing different things, but we were seeing things at that hour of the night as well. How, for success at Coast to Kosci, how's your training? What's the different training you apply to Coast to Kosci, Joe, than you would apply to your normal either track? Obviously track's different, but then say to your normal ultra training, how do you train differently for success at Coast to Kosci, Oscar?
Yeah, well, it's a unique distance, 240 Ks. And Nikki mentioned Brendan Davies. I've had some great coaches over the years that have helped me break this race down and figure out how to run it. But also, obviously, Martin Fryer and Claudine Chi have been instrumental in my training and my progress. I think, the advice for the Coast to Kosci would be willing to explore your blind spots and any assumptions you have about your training or the race. And it's really better to find out your flaws, or not even your flaws, but just any little gaps in your training. You really want to find those in your training rather than during the race. There's nothing worse, like the worst feeling is when you're cursing yourself at 200 Ks because you know you should have brought more body glide, or you should have done more hills, or you should have done more walking training, whatever it is. Just put yourself in a place where when you're on the start line, you can just enjoy it and have fun and soak up all of the energy from the event. And yeah, and be that sort of version of yourself that is thoroughly prepared.
Oh, thanks, Joe. What about for you, Nikki?
My training's probably a bit different to what Joe's up to. I tend to stay away from road as much as possible, only because I tend to break down. So for me, my idea of road, I'll put in some dirt road, a lot more of, it's just a little bit more scenic, I think, and it's not so brutal on myself. But I also do a lot of cross training. So I try and running under fatigue, keeping that shuffle going, it tends to help me, and the cross training helps not overtrain or break down too much. So by my cross training, I tend to do a lot of CrossFit, and also I've got a Concept 2 bike, so I do a lot of biking as well. And that's how I'm normally on the trails and single track until it's Coast To Kosci time, and then I'm onto the big fire trails, and that's it.
Fair enough. Thank you. So we should see you racing Trevor Allen as first out of the Creek Fire Trail.
Well, the first year I learnt my lesson. I won't be doing that.
Cool.
Nikki, just one thing that came to mind there. Have you ever used a coach? Because Joe mentioned some of the coaches that have helped him along the way. Have you ever used a coach?
No, I haven't. Only because I'm really scared that it'll turn into a job for me. I am super conscious of this being something that I find joy in, and I'm so worried that if I did have a coach that was monitoring what I was doing, I would start feeling like I'd have to be running, and it wouldn't be something that I'm choosing to do. Almost since the beginning, I've been using, like, Hanny Alston from Find Your Feet has a free plan online, and that's something that I've always used and adapted over the years. And because it's used, it's on hours as well, so as I get faster, I'm actually out there doing more kilometers, and I can also work that in with the family and make sure that I know how long I'm going to be out for. It doesn't matter if I'm tired or not. I'll be out there for 6 hours, and I'll be home after the 6 hours, no matter what distance I've covered. So it tends to work with me a little bit.
Cool. Great answer. Mental preparation. So Coast To Kosci, 240 Ks, as we know. How do you stay motivated during the long hours of running? And what mental techniques have worked with you? Nikki, I'll stay with you, please.
So for me, motivation is, well, I tend to use more of it as a routine. If I'm on my training plan, that's it, it's my routine. So it's not really up for debate. I try and do all my training, my running training, first thing in the morning. So I'm up and I'm out. There's not much time for me to talk myself out of it or see all the other things I could fit into my day. For the long runs, I try to make them a little bit more fun. If my friends can't join me, I'll always have my dog, Mouse. And if, on the weekend I had a 50K run that I chose to do loops around my house so I would get road in. And I managed to incorporate my dog for one loop and some of my kids for some of that, and then some solo ones in there as well. And that kept me going. And it's a good way to sort of break it up, but it's also a bit of a mental test as well, to have that point where you could bail out and it would be okay. No one would know. But to still keep going, and once you finish, it just motivates you for the next time you have that lull in the next motivation for your run. You know that it's just going to pass and you'll keep going. And that's what I do.
Good advice. Thank you. And Joe?
Yeah, I think Nikki's absolutely right. It's really subjective. You have to do things in a way that you love and enjoy. Has to be fun for you. You're not training for someone else, and you certainly don't want it to feel like a chore or a job. Um, I think, you know, you have to have more than one mental tool to fall back on. You have to have options. I like to have several different tools. I call it my Batman tool belt. So when one trick inevitably stops working, which it will in the Coast To Kosci, you're going to be doing some troubleshooting. You're gonna, you know, one year I remember loading up the car, going, right, we're going home. That's it. Fed up with this place. You're going to want to quit and want to give up. That's perfectly natural in this crazy sport. You just have to make sure you have a backup for your backup, so you can mentally shift gears if you need to, and, you know, have plenty of tricks available, so that worst comes to the worst, if you do throw a bit of a hissy fit or a tantrum, you can dig yourself out of that.
What kind of tools are in your Batman belt, Joe? Is it like drugs so you can hallucinate, or, you know, what's in that belt?
I'm not sure if psychedelic mushrooms are legal in competition yet, but, you know, hopefully, fingers crossed. You know what? Like, again, it's subjective, and, you know, I could tell you all the things I do, and it wouldn't be beneficial to anyone. I think, you know, one of the key things I do is I call it cleaning the fridge. So I have all of my ducks in a row before a race. When I'm out there, all I have to
Fuck
do.
was that?
Don't worry, it was just somebody.
I hope that wasn't feedback. So
I don't think it was.
okay, good. So I like to, you know, have everything super neat and tidy, not just in my kitchen, but also kind of mentally as well. I like all of my ducks in a row, and that's my cleaning the fridge technique for preparing for a race. And now it's kind of gone from cleaning the fridge to cleaning the microwave to, you know, making sure I've got new covers on the bed and paying all my bills. And, you know, I do all these things so that when I get there, I can literally just run and there's nothing to worry about.
No distractions.
Exactly, yeah.
That makes good sense, Joe. And I know I like to be organised and be under control as a runner. And Joe, appreciating your relationship with Tailwind. This is not intended to be a plug for Tailwind by any means. How do you fuel differently? Again, how do you fuel for Coast To Kosci? What's your fueling strategy and approach you tend to take? And then similarly, Nikki, we'll be asking you the same question.
Yeah, so obviously sponsored by Tailwind, so I swear by Tailwind. It's absolutely fantastic. It helps me run without getting cramps. It keeps my muscles happy. And I think if all else fails, you've got this drip, drip, drip of carbs going into your system and electrolytes keeping your muscles nice and hydrated. And look, you know, it's not meant to be a plug for Tailwind, but I've gone from back of the pack in 2013 to winning in 2021. So it's doing something right. And everybody sweats different. So, you know, there's different products out there that you can use, and, you know, different things will work. I think it's really subjective. The key thing I would say is that Coast To Kosci is probably more of an eating contest than it is a running contest. The people that tend to do the best load up on the calories in the first half, or even the first 2/3, and then you're fueling your legs really for that last 20Ks, 40Ks, where the race gets very steep, very challenging on super tired legs. So if you can fuel yourself with that in mind, knowing you've got that glorious climb, but challenging climb at the end, then you'll finish nice and strong.
Thanks, Joe. And that can even also serve as a plug for the Toowoomba barbecue, 20K in for that first half. Thank you. Nikki, what approach do you take for Coast To Kosci with fueling? That can be across either different types of things, timing. What do you find has worked for you?
For me, it's probably not as common. My stomach is super sensitive, so if I try and have any type of real food, it'll go straight through me. So I have Morton's seems to work quite well. I've used Tailwind. I used Tailwind for quite a few years, and then I had my third child, and something went different with my digestive system, and it didn't like Tailwind anymore. So for me, it's as basic as it can be is the best option for me. So I've got the Morton's powder seems to work really well, and the Morton's gel. The flavors, there's not really a whole lot of flavor to it. It sits well in my stomach, so I can handle it. And then once you sort of get flavor fatigue or whatever it is, and I don't want to have any more of that, the glucose jelly beans from the chemist works wonders for me. And the Coda electrolyte shots are quite good for me as well. I quite enjoy those ones. They're quite refreshing and not too sweet. And that tends to get me through. In terms of real food, might be like a salted breadstick. That's pretty much it, especially at Coast To Kosci, because there's not a whole lot of options for food. For Elephant Trail this year, they had like a chili con carne with like warm potatoes, and that was amazing. I was able to demolish that at the checkpoints, but I was also having a really bad race, so I was going a lot slower. So maybe that has something to do with the digestion working a bit better then. I mean, it'd be lovely to have that along the Coast To Kosci course, but I think it's a little bit much to ask for my crew.
You never know. We'll put in a word for the Dalgety catering. Again, that's for the
Be
crew.
good.
Let's say the rudders. Joe mentioned about preference to load early.
Yeah.
You'd sort of hinted for you it's more consistency over time, and again that fatigue, food fatigue, stomach fatigue, taste fatigue kicks in at some stage sooner or later on Coast To Kosci. But how does it work for you?
I tend to last pretty well on not a lot. I mean, I'm sure my race results would probably be a lot better if I could fuel a bit better. But yeah, the risk of the upset stomach, it does my head in. So it tends to slow me down a lot more. I'm a lot more careful. Unless I really, really craved something, then I would try it. But I can go a fair while. Like I could go probably up until about Gingerbine, and then I might have to swap to like Coke and jelly beans, and that might be about it until the finish. So it's a bit of a hard slog.
I reckon you were maybe getting an unfair advantage eating chili because you'd ended up turbo powered along the route there after that.
No comment.
All right. Let's talk about pacing and strategy, and I'll go to you first, Joe. How do you manage your pace over such long distances? And, going back to when you actually won it, was there a specific race strategy that you had, or did it just kind of like appear on the horizon that, oh shit, I can win this?
I knew I was going to win on the Thursday before I started the race, and we prepared for that mentally. But my training from the kind of technical perspective was all heart rate training. So, trying to manage your true effort level is really the key, I think, there's obviously as a coach at Manly Beach Running Club, I tell people to run slow, and everybody's slow is very different. So slow can mean 6.5 minute Ks, 7 minute Ks to one person. It can mean 4:10 to someone else. So you really have to run super duper easy, but genuinely, honestly easy. So my rule was whenever I felt like I was going too slow, I would go a little bit slower than that. And, my yoga teacher has a great mantra for this approach, which he calls which is slower is better 100% of the time. And I think this is true in a lot of aspects of long distance running and probably aspects of life as well. But, if you go slow, and Coast To Kosci has proved this 100 times, the guys that start at the back of the pack end up on the podium. So slower is better 100% of the time.
I wonder if Trevor Allen is listening. Nikki, same question.
Well, I know what I should do, but I don't necessarily follow it all the time. Every time I'm on the start line, I always go, okay, I'm going to go out slow. I'm going to be really comfortable. And at that point in time, it feels comfortable. It feels slow. And then all of a sudden it doesn't. So for pacing Coast to Kosci, I completely agree with Joe Ward. If you feel comfortable and feel slow, go slower. And I think with what I love seeing is like Pam Muston. The way she paces Coast to Kosci is so amazing. And every year I'm like, just try and stick with her. Just try and stick with her. She's brilliant company. So it's awesome company to have the whole time. But somewhere along the line, we yo-yo and then we get to Jindabyne and then she passes me and then she's gone. I never see her again. So she's a great example of how to pace, and you don't have to go out hard. And when you feel like you're getting passed by all the runners, it can be really defeating, but know that it's a long race and there is going to be so much time to catch up on those people. And I can guarantee you will see most of them. If they pass you at the start, you will guarantee you will see them again.
That makes good sense, Nikki. And I think, I think I did spent the first 80K of my first Coast to Kosci with Pam. And yeah, when I didn't see her anymore, I didn't see her anymore. And she finished a long time before me. We've got Nikki, we've got quite a large number of first timers in this year's race, 30, trying to think now, 33, 34, I think by memory. What would be probably your best advice or recommendations, a couple of top things you'd say to someone who hasn't done this before? If you see them in the shopping centre at Eden the day or two before, or you're talking to them, what are a couple of key things you'd tell them?
For me, my advice would probably be to do with your packing for your crew. It's a really long race, and while we're out there running, the crew have a really hard job, and they have to try and anticipate what we need. And I think the right thing to do is pack as much as you possibly can for all sorts of different scenarios, which means that you have a lot of your gear in your car with your crew that may not be familiar with, your favorite pink top that you want to wear. So I would say label everything, have it as clear as mud, so a child could go in and pick up exactly what you need. And that will alleviate so much pain for you and your crew when you're out there. Everyone's at their wit's end and a little bit tired and needing some rest. That's one thing that you don't have to worry about. That's my big one.
Oh, thank you. Brett, for yourself, Joe, what are a couple of things you would say to all the first timers?
Well, firstly, I'd say this is the best race in Australia, and you're in the right place. Coast to Kosci has changed my life, and this race is phenomenal. And I've made some amazing friendships and made this amazing ultra community connection, which is absolutely phenomenal. I think, from a more tangible recommendation for the actual race, break it down into sections. And this is going to help you psychologically and logistically. You want to achieve some small wins as you go along the way, and you want to feel like you're making progress. If you look at it as 240, it'll kind of eat you up. So I would say maybe breaking it down into 3 by 80K sections, and thinking about each of those 80Ks as almost individual events is a better way to break this down. And you're going to go through different weather and different seasons and completely different parts of the course. And I would say each of those 80Ks have a very different personality. And then the other thing that's probably most important and most relevant to people will be to practice your nutrition in your long runs. Stomach issues in this race can be a real deal breaker. So yeah, practice your nutrition. I've just thought of one more though, which is don't go into Dalgety Hall. I think Dalgety Hall is so inviting. It's warm and it's lovely, and there's lots of friendly faces there, but that is for the crew. It's not for you. If you go in there, you will sit down and you're unlikely to leave. It's like a flip of a coin as to whether you'll get out of Dalgety. So you get into Dalgety and you get out as quickly as you can. Dalgety is like a tractor beam. He wants to keep you there.
But at 148 kj, Joe, it has a wonderful toilet. I'll say that.
That's priceless, Joe, though. Yeah, it's like a vortex. It just kind of sucks you in, and like you're very, very fortunate if you ever get out of it.
And interestingly, just breaking that into sections, Joe, like Cathcart's 70k, or if you go to Bibbullook, it's a touch over that, like I said, a bit over 80. So that sort of breaks as one piece, and then through to, you know, Dalgety's your 148 mark, or even to Beloka, so you're able to break those, break those sections. That sort of makes sense from that perspective.
I really like that description, Joe. It's like you said as well, each of those 4 sections have got roughly different personalities as well.
Absolutely. And I think you're going through different seasons. You're going from freezing cold at the start and, you know, down at the beach, and then it's going to get hot in the middle of the day. And then you're heading into this kind of, you know, Christmassy winter landscape. So it really is 3 different chapters of the same event, and it's epic, but you can't think of it as a big block, as a big one thing.
Yeah. So we only truly learn when we stuff up, I think. And with that in mind, kind of learning from mistakes. Nikki, start with you. Can you share any mistakes you've made during Coast To Kosci, specifically, and what you've learned from them?
Well, one we've already touched on is going out too hard, too fast. The first year, I think I might have even been the first female coming into that first checkpoint. And I remember telling my crew, "It's okay, I feel fine, I feel really good, this is so easy." And then it didn't. And then I think that at that race, I got to the 100k point near the dead tree. And from then on, I think I'd actually had a little bit of a fainting episode, and then once I continued, my knee blew up, and I was pretty much walking from then on into the finish. So that was a long, hard, sore lesson to learn. But all my mistakes I do use as lessons, and it's cool to learn those types of things. So definitely don't go out too fast. I won't be doing that again. I'll try and go slower and slower every year and see if I can finish faster.
Thanks, Nikki. Joe?
Yeah, as Nikki said, the mistakes you learn at the Coast To Kosci are gold, and they'll teach you a lot about yourself and how to run more successfully and how to tackle other races. When you go back to the 100 miles, you know, 100-mile events feel so easy compared to Coast To Kosci. So you can really become an expert of long distance running by just, you know, going back and doing the Coast To Kosci a couple of times. But the biggest mistake I've made was not eating enough. And I've paid the price, you know, towards the end in a couple of races. And I've seen other athletes do the same thing, where they're running beautifully, and then this big monster just comes up and grabs them and drags them off into a wooded area. So get those calories in, especially in the first 24 hours. And you have to remember, you know, even though it feels a little bit like a 100-mile race, this is the big one. This isn't 160 odd Ks. This is the Coast To Kosci. So you've got to put as much energy into your system so your legs are feeling good in the back half.
Thanks, Joe.
Oh, yeah, you've probably touched on this a little bit, Joe, around the ultramarathon community and the people involved generically in ultra running and a number of these sorts of races, including Coast To Kosci. To you, again, this is from a runner's perspective, and I know you've crewed as well. How important to you as a runner is that ultramarathon group around you and the support crew family across the field around you? And are there any sort of advice or elements you would give, understanding that ultra running at times you can look at it one angle, and yeah, at times it is solo, perhaps training is a solo sport, but an actual race event is more about a group and a community. So how important is that community or Kosciuszko community to you?
Yeah, look, I think the ultra running community is very special. It's a group of absolute nutters that also happen to be very fit as well. If we weren't running ultras, I think we'd all be in straitjackets somewhere or committing crimes. So it's an interesting group of people. The C2K community is very special. You mentioned a few names at the start of this Zoom call today, you know, the Jane Trumpers and the Kevin Heatons and, you know, all of those legends that have run this race before us. If you get the chance to rub shoulders with those people, it really rubs off on you and you see the world in a completely different way. The C2K is an epic event, but it is the C2K community that makes the event so special, I think. And yeah, we're all passing on this knowledge, and I've seen different generations of Coast to Kosci runners tackle the event with slightly different ways, you know, slightly different kind of psychologies and ways of approaching the event, whether it's just being super tough or it's being a bit more scientific or it's being a bit of a hippie. You know, each generation has their own new take on how to run the race. But in terms of support crew, a lot of the support crews have run the Coast to Kosci. You know, a great experienced support crew are worth their weight in gold in this race. You know, your support crew will make or break your race and be instrumental in your success. Some will say with this event, it's worth noting for the first timers, you know, some people will say, a lot of people will say that the crew have a harder job than the runner in this event. And I think that's pretty accurate. You're awake for 2 days, you get no glory. You've got a runner that's complaining and whinging and has all sorts of bodily fluids all over them. It's full on to crew at Coast to Kosciuszko. So make sure you show some gratitude to your crew and also make sure you pick the right people. You know, you want people that are super resilient, flexible, and not afraid to see you naked. So yeah, important stuff.
I'll throw to you, Nikki, although I'm not sure about that last line and how applicable that is relatively. Nikki, your perspective?
The Coast to Kosci entrance, I mean, back again at I think it was my first Narrabeen all-nighter, I met Blue Dog, and he said to me, "Oh, you should go have a look at this race, Coast to Kosci." And I was thinking, what is this thing? He goes, 240 kilometers on the road from Eden all the way up to Mount Kosciuszko. And I'm thinking, 240 kilometers? I haven't even run 100 kilometers yet. And they're the type of people that open your mind up to what we're capable of and the adventures that are out there that an ordinary human can go and train for and go and do if they want to. And at Coast to Kosci, there's not just Blue Dog that can do that for you, open up your mind. It's all the other people that are running the race. So if you are a rookie, that's another message. Go and chat to the other runners. There is so many really interesting stories. You can't find anyone else in a race like this with such a broad range of experience, and they're just really fun people to talk to. And that from Coast to Kosci, I've been able to get so many close friends, like Jane Trumper is someone I hold really dearly. And every year you come back and you want to see those people because, I mean, we joke about the fact that we don't have to run 240 kilometers and put our bodies through this just to catch up. Like, we could go out for dinner one night, we could be totally normal human beings. Yet we keep coming back and doing this thing because those drinks on the Sunday night is just something that we love to get together, and that feeling of accomplishment. And I don't have that any other time throughout the year from any other race than I do at Coast to Kosci. And crew-wise, I'm lucky to have my husband be my main crew. So he's a brilliant rock for me. If I didn't have him, I wouldn't be able to do these races. And if he wasn't invested in me doing these races, I wouldn't do it because it's too much pressure on the family. So when I have those meltdowns, which are normally really early on in my race, it's like 20 to 30 kilometers, and I'll be like, oh my God, what have I done? What have I entered myself into? And I'll be saying, I don't think I can do this. And my husband will turn to me and say, oh, well, just let me know because I'll let everyone know that we're going to pull out. And he knows that that will make me go, oh, well, I don't want to quit. Okay, fine, I'll go. And then I just keep going. And then that moment passes. He knows me well enough to know that these are just phases that you go through. And so having him, I've got that one rock. And then the rest of my crew, I select depending on the personality clicks that click with me. And I know that either they will, they won't take me too seriously if I am in a bit of a hole, because that can sometimes be a bit harder. You might dig it even deeper. So I agree with Joe. It's really important to pick your crew and know what you're like when you aren't feeling at your best, and the ones that will help you keep pushing through that and continue on. So it's really valuable and extremely important in this particular race.
Thanks, Nikki. That's great perspectives, and I'd encourage all the runners, encourage your support crews to meet the other support crews during the race. You spend a lot of time sitting on the side of the road. You'll see each other, passing each other a lot. Spend the time, get to know people. You go through some beautiful country, and as both Joe and Nikki said, you'll meet some wonderful people, and some people who all need to push others along at times, and also help each other out. There's been a lot of really great questions. I was going to ask Nikki if we've got time, if there's any questions in the chat, if anyone wants to drop a quick question in the chat for either Joe or Nikki.
There's no questions in the chat to speak of, but we're nearly out of time. But anybody that's got a quick question, feel free to jump in now. Just bring yourself off mute.
Hi, this is Lisa. I just wanted to ask a question. It was actually just to do with the sections that you've got a pacer with you, just to get a better feel for, just clarify what the distance is that the pacers are running those sections, not the summit bit, but I think it's the Cowbale Trail and Burke Hill. Just wanted to know what the distance the pacer would be with you for those.
By memory, Mickey, off the top of my head, from the base of Cowbale Trail to Cathcart is about 15k.
Correct.
So it is the 15.
So but bear in mind the first probably I think 7.5 of that, Nikki, is pretty well straight up. Narrow. It's narrow fire trail. Mickey and I did it on Friday, and it was an awful lot quicker coming back down than it was going up. And what was good is there were no moving sticks, so there were no snakes there at that stage. So that section's 15k. The first half is steep, the second half is flat, but that's the pacer with you. The second section, and then at night anyway, it's effectively from Gunning Rack onwards, which is at 106k, or when dusk falls, and most people are normally around Gunning Rack. They're either 10, 15k short of it, or they're sort of 20 to 30k past it, but it's from then on.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the Burke Hill, because I think you have to have someone with you from Burke Hill, and that's about 3k, is that right?
It's a touch more than that, I think, by memory, Mickey, off the top of my head. It's funny, as a runner, it always feels like a big wide road, but when you drive Burke during the day, you actually go, shit, it's pretty narrow up there. But Mickey and I found, like last year, there was a lot of road damage, particularly from Burke through to Jindabyne. And again, like most local councils, road repairs and all those things were miles behind because of all the rain and stuff they had last year. The roads are substantially better. Like, they've not resurfaced that section of road, but it's been patched up pretty well. And we actually found although we're still probably 6 weeks out from the race, all the roads were in really good condition with very few corrugations at all. It was actually was wonderful to actually drive on rather than the shuddering you often get. So the course is looking in good condition. So that's to answer your question. That's the two sections.
Margie Hadley is asked a question as well. On average, how many crew pacers would each runner have? Margie, on average, I'd say like 2. And there's another question in there around any advice on naps or or getting going after a rest. So that was Greg that posted that.
Throw that, Nikki, to Joe and to Nikki.
Yeah.
Nikki, to you.
So is any advice on naps or not, or going after a rest?
For me as a runner, I don't nap. I can't quite switch off. I don't know whether it's the caffeine or all the sugar I take in. But for the crew, I think it's important that they have a sleep. So through those, if you can have some longer sections, for us, what works for us is I'll get them to leave something, if you know, an extra water bottle or something like that on the car, and we can run past them and let them have a little bit more of a sleep, or you've got your pacer at that point, so they can carry a little bit more for you, poor pacer, but then you can carry on a bit more, so the people in the car can get a bit more of a rest. That's what we tend to do through the night and the early dawn hours. Not so much after Jindabyne. It's a bit tricky for them to get too much of a rest.
What about you, Joe?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's quite subjective again. Every runner's different and everyone's going to have a different strategy. I think when I have used naps in the past, then I've had like a 5-minute power nap. One of my crew has set an alarm. I've closed my eyes for 5 minutes and had like a micro nap. And that's been really powerful, just to kind of get rid of the sleep monsters and kind of wake your brain up a bit. So you can get rest from a quick 5-minute recharge. It's funny, I remember all the places that I've had those little 5-minute naps on the course. So there's a log at the top of the national park climb, and I sat on that log and had 5 minutes, and I was so grateful to that log. But I would say, as I've kind of got a bit faster and done a few more of these events, I would say, you know, the strategy would be to suffer fast. You're going to be tired. You're going to, you know, feel like you need to have some rest and have a nap. But actually, if you can avoid that and just keep going, you know, you'll get to the end a bit quicker, and you'll get to that pizza and that nice beer or glass of wine, and then you can have a proper nap.
Thanks, Joe. One final question, Nikki, that's just been posted. Do you think your CrossFit training has improved your running?
I don't know. I think it's improved my rate of breakdown. It's probably improved my mental side. I think with running, it's very much if you're lighter, you're faster, and you can get caught in that rabbit hole of underfueling and thinking that that's the right thing to do in order to make you faster. And part of what made me join CrossFit to begin with was to try and rebuild after getting a little bit too silly with underfueling. And at CrossFit, you're doing all that strength, you're doing the high intensity, and that, I think, carries over really well. It's definitely taught me how to push a little bit harder, whether, you know, CrossFit workouts are only, longest will be maybe 40 minutes. Very rarely we get a 40-minute workout. But learning how to keep your body at a red line and continue on with that, I think has been quite valuable for me, because I would never do that on my own. And I would never, even on hill repeats, I wouldn't push myself quite that far, but I will in CrossFit. And I think the strength that it helps me with the breakdown, especially on the trails. I'm not entirely sure how it's going to go with the road, because I've got more muscle mass now, so that's extra weight to carry along that hard road might be a bit tricky, but we'll find out.
Thanks, Nikki. Thanks so much, Nikki and Joe. This has been really, really awesome. There's going to be a recording of this, and I know for one, I'll definitely be referring back to it. So thank you so much. Nikki, Joe, really appreciate your insights,
Thank you.
Your perspectives. That's us, guys, for this webinar. The next one is in support crew. That's in next Thursday. So look forward to seeing everybody there. In the meantime, thank you very much from Greg and
Thank
myself.
you.
Thank you very much.
See you later.
Yeah.
Cheers, everyone.
Bye.
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 Bye.